For your midday dose of insightful positive energy and a boost of stimulating artistry, tune in now to experience creative inspiration with Chantel.
Now, who would you say was your most favorite person you could think of right now? For me, it would be Harold Theodore Rollins III. Charismatic, funny, and intelligent, and extremely handsome. Now that was the least you could say about him. When he walked into a space, and I do mean any space, he commanded your attention to flow to him. His energy just seemed to suck you in. He was a sharp dresser and a fine businessman. At the tender age of 28, at least 28 looks tender from where I'm sitting, he bought his first mini market. And by the time he was just shy of his 40th birthday, he'd become the owner and operator of 11. He was quite the popular fellow around this town, too. And even though he accumulated a lot of businesses and wealth over the course of his life, he wasn't too high in how he carried himself. On the contrary, he was quite the opposite. He was very down to earth and possessed this very approachable demeanor. So much so that many folks were just drawn to him, young and old alike. Many admired his position as a family man too, and how he interacted with his wife and his 4 offspring when they were out and about around town. He was known for instilling in his children the importance of never forgetting about investing in the long term. His famous saying was, "Do something today that will better your tomorrow." Yes, sir. Harold Theodore Rollins III, he was the truth. And I don't suspect there will ever be another man like him. My life is richer because I even knew him, and blessed even the more because I have the privilege of calling him my father. One thing for certain and 2 things for sure. Not one of my parents' apples fell far from the tree. No, sorry. When I look at my siblings and when I look in the mirror, there is solid evidence of their character residing on the inside of each one of us. The seed of endowment that had been sown and nurtured over the years had matured and was currently manifesting in each one of our lives. Now, both of my sisters had acted with great wisdom in their finances and were retired before they reached the age of 45. My brother went on into the military, and after retirement, he returned to our hometown and opened up a mini market chain. Now, he was the spitting physical image of my father, so it was only right that he would walk in his footsteps. Often during my time of reflection, I would find myself staring at our last family photo, which was taken in the beautiful Caribbean, and the feeling of pride would just wash over me as the joy of it all settled on my face and in my heart. My parents had put forth their best effort to give us everything they had to offer from an emotional, spiritual, financial, and intellectual standpoint in order to ensure that we would be upright citizens and well-rounded individuals as we endeavored on the path set before us and in the world around us. Now, in my opinion, they had done well for and by us. I've come to cherish every seed that they managed to sow. And I must say, I could not have picked a better set of people to call my mother and father. Sometimes I find myself missing them tremendously. Then my mind is quickened, and I remember that their spirit of love, of compassion and benevolence, of integrity and goodwill is alive and well on the inside of us. And that brings joy to my heart. And not to mention, the older I get, my mother's face is sitting right on top of mine. I declare, both my mother and father have left behind an amazing legacy. Now, just in case you're wondering, allow me to settle your curiosity. About what, you say? Well, I'm glad you asked. About me. I don't want you to think for another moment that I'm the odd man out. I've done pretty good for myself, too. No, I didn't retire as early as my sisters did, but I am now happily retired just the same. And no, I didn't open a chain of mini markets like my older brother, but I do go shop at a few of his from time to time. Truth is, the seed of investment grew a little differently for me as it got nurtured along the way from various resources. Not that anything is wrong with the accumulation of financial wealth, because I'm certainly enjoying the fruit of my many years of labor, honeys. But my perspective and value may be just a little taste different than those of my siblings. You see, where money became their motivation and central theme, I didn't view it quite that way. I chose to use it as a tool. My heart was more moved by and concerned with people. I wondered, how can I help them become better just like so many had done for me along the way? Now, make no mistake about it, sugars. This was not always the case for me until godly wisdom began to settle in my life. Now, if you'll lean in close, I'll tell you a little story about when things started to take a turn for me. If I had to name something that I absolutely adored in this life outside of God and my family, it would be the arts. All of them. I mean, for as long as I remember, I've always loved the arts, especially the performing arts. Oh, I participated in all sorts of drama and singing and dancing events when I was a young girl. But now that I, along with my knees, are older, I've pretty much taken a back seat as an active participant. But let me tell you, honeys, it didn't diminish my love for it. Now, being an observer of individuals who have identified and now reside in their gifting for singing and dancing and acting and playing musical instruments always transports me to my happy place. One of those people is my beautiful daughter, Simone. I know you may think I'm biased, But trust me when I tell you she really possesses a gift when it comes to acting. I can clearly remember when she first got started. She was quite the fearless actor, and I absolutely adored watching her take on these various characters and just bring them to life on stage. I always pushed her to pursue in this area because although I knew she was passionate about it, sometimes young people are just a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? They're a bit lazy. I thought it best to just go ahead and put the hay down where the goats could get it. I wanted to go ahead and give you the baby without the labor pains. Oh, we all familiar with it. They just need a little swift kick in the pants every now and then to help them to keep up their momentum so they don't lose sight of the big picture. Now, surely we seasoned folk know all about this from experience, since there's nothing new under the sun, right? Thank you for the amen. I tell you, I believe in my heart that Simone can honestly say that she appreciated my taking interest in supporting her in this manner, because today she's still on fire for theater. Now, just after she graduated from high school, she was auditioning like crazy. She was going out for any and every role imaginable. Within reason, that is, because I'm still her mama. And then finally, it happened. She got on board with a local acting troupe, and she was performing on quite a consistent basis. Now, you talking about proud? Oh, I was certainly one proud mama as I got the privilege to enjoy watching my beautiful butterfly spread her wings, soaring amazingly higher than I had ever imagined or even set my sights. She was living her dream. And between you and me, so was I. I wanted nothing more than for my children to experience and indulge in all that brought them joy and happiness. When the day arrived for the troupe to wrap up their season, it was decided that they would be on break for the next 7 months. Now, Simone seemed a bit saddened and displaced by this news and didn't know quite how she was going to appropriate her time, since over the course of the last year, she's been filled up with rehearsals and shows. And because I'm her mama and I can sense her disappointment, I tried to encourage her, to get her to see the brighter side of things. I told her that she could choose to embrace this time off and use it for rest and reflection. Then she could start fresh and pursue other opportunities with the right perspective when the time came about. Now, of course, she indulged her old mama for a little while, and I'm pretty sure it was probably just so I'd hush my mouth about it, which worked. Well, after about 3 weeks had passed, and wouldn't you know that an opportunity came knocking? Yes, sir. We were in one of our services at church, and there was an audition announcement made for an upcoming stage play that would be held in association with our annual covenant conference. I was trying to contain my own self, and then I glanced over there at Simone. She was so overcome with emotion that I was sure that her eyes was gonna pop out her head and her veins out her neck. Honey, she hugged me so tightly she almost cut off my circulation. She just kept repeating to me that God had answered her prayers and that she would never forget this opportunity. Well, little did she know, he had answered mine too, because I had grown plumb tired of hearing her say how bored she was at every turn, especially when there was plenty of cooking and cleaning and laundry to be done. Now, fast forward, the day had come for Simone to attend the audition, and for some reason, she was a nervous wreck. I had never seen her quite like this before. Now, I tried calming her down through various breathing exercises, and I tried to remind her of what an amazingly talented and gifted actress she was. And for a moment, it all seemed to help. That is, until they called her name. And she started hyperventilating. Lord, help is all I could get out as my own heartbeat had started speeding up. A few of the other mothers and myself worked on her, and we were finally able to get her some water and a cold compress and get her breathing and heartbeat regulated. I must admit, during the time that she was back there in her audition, honeys, I felt just like I was sitting on a pincushion. I could hardly sit still for any matter of time. I had to step outside a few times to get me some fresh air and to pray so I could get myself together before they finished. So finally, I started seeing some of the young people filing out from the back, and I was anxiously awaiting Simone's face. See, her face has a voice of its own. It tells the story well before she ever dares to open her mouth. Once I caught a glimpse of her walking towards me behind a couple of the guys, my heart seemed to stop beating. Her face was as blank as a canvas. I started quietly panicking, and then I began to petition the Lord for the words of comfort to share with her to soothe her broken heart. And just as she was standing within 10 feet of me, she starts jumping up and down and screaming to the top of her lungs that she got the part. Woo! What you talking about relieved? Honeys, I was just plumb tickled that I could start breathing again, and I decided it was a good time to welcome my heart back into my body. I was something relieved by this news. As we got in the car, she told me every single detail of the audition and the story. She was ecstatic, and I was excited for her and proud of her. She kept saying that something is going to be different about this experience, and I had no idea just how right she was. Irvin Armstrong had been brought on board at one of our covenant churches years ago to oversee the drama department. He had come in by way of some very admirable and high recommendations from a few pastors from his hometown that were well acquainted with our spiritual covering. Now, over the years, we had visited with and grown close to Irvin and his family. He was somewhat of a mysterious man in his own way, kind of due to his shy nature. But one thing that we quickly discovered about him was his huge heart. Now, he was one of those folks that loved to love people. Irvin was quite a gifted playwright and an artistic director. He brought things alive on stage. He had a very keen eye for theater, and his storytelling skills, oh honeys, they were nothing short of amazing and beautifully engaging. Another attribute that Irvin had become well known for was his ability to bring out the best in others. There was a quietness about him that I suspect many misunderstood or didn't quite know how to deal with. But I found that he was very observant, and his spiritual eye's vision often superseded others' natural view. Now, I tell you, he certainly had my vote of confidence. I made the decision within to attend the very first rehearsal just to show support to Simone as she got started with her new endeavor. Thankfully, on this day, I recognized my daughter. She was back and settled into her confident self. She had already begun tapping into the memorization phase. She had consistently emphasized that she didn't want to find herself behind at any point during the rehearsal process. I commended her for that tenacity that she possessed. She had gotten that honest from her daddy. To Simone's surprise, this first gathering was not quite what she had anticipated. It was what Irvin had deemed an investment session, where he took out time to answer any questions, perform a character analysis, and discover how to bring to life the words that were on the paper. Irvin had provided the script to the cast early on and encouraged them to take some time to study it in depth, but he didn't tell them that he had planned on holding this type of session as a kickoff to the rehearsal process. Well, as I mentioned previously, Simone is quite passionate about theater, and she often found the character discovery phase to be quite fascinating. She had completed her unassigned homework. Needless to say, she was prepared for the discussion, but she was still provided with several opportunities to learn through some of this discussion, as well as through various techniques Irvin had shared with the cast. She was actively taking notes and seemingly hanging on and soaking up every nugget that Irvin was carefully dropping. As the session wrapped up and we prepared to leave, Irvin yelled Simone's name and gave her a thumbs up and said, "Good job tonight." And then he quickly resumed what he was doing. On the way home, Simone seemed to talk nonstop. She was really eager about this opportunity and fascinated by varying aspects of Irvin's ability to mentally transport a person through the use of his creative artistry. Irvin was heavily influenced by and a diligent student of the Bible. This truth was definitely evident in his writing, which required lots of attention, time, and detail to gain adequate understanding of what the script was all about so that it could translate to the audience when the shows were put on. Let me tell you, Simone dived all the way in head first into this process. She spent countless hours studying the script and studying the Bible. As I observed Simone during this time, I could see her evolving, her demeanor change, her perspective begin to shift. She was being made new right before my eyes. I was humbled by the Lord's hand on her life. One day, she came home from rehearsal and took a seat next to me. She sat in silence for a moment before telling me how thankful she was for Irvin taking time out with her. She talked about all that she'd learned from him so far and about how selfless he had been in sharing his wealth of knowledge with her. She went on to say it was one thing to receive this kind of gift from me and her father, but it was a whole other thing to receive it from someone that was not a part of our family. The final words that she shared are what really grabbed and held my attention. And those very same words are still alive and well in my heart. She said it's an overwhelming feeling to know that someone else thinks you're worth investing in. What a mouthful. And I couldn't agree more. Not only was I moved by how mature my baby girl was becoming, but in that moment, she shined the light of love in my heart. And she reminded me how important it is that we put forth the effort to dedicate an aspect of our lives to making others around us better. That is just what my parents had done for me, for my siblings, and for countless others. They lived the ministry of help, love, and integrity right before us with sufficient consistency. Not only that, they were following the example that God had set before them. And in that moment, I was moved to compassion, and I vowed to do the same for my children, to teach them through my example the power of an investment.
Thank you for listening to today's broadcast of Creative Inspiration with Chantel. It is our hope that something was said to challenge you, recharge you, and change you. For more opportunities to connect with me, log on to www.kingdomliterarywworks.com/positiveenergy-blog or www.facebook.com/CIWS76. Until next time, be encouraged,